Hey, friends, welcome back for another episode of the My Impossible podcast. Today, I had the privilege of sitting with Rebecca Denae. Rebecca is from a small town to the west of Jacksonville called Cross City, Florida. And you're in for an amazing, if I could dare say, epic story that she's going to share of her impossible. I'm going to leave every other detail to her as you listen here in a few moments. What I will say is who Rebecca is to me is the word audacious with a heavy dose of humor. And you don't hear a ton of her humor in the conversation, but I know it's there. It's just sort of this underlying piece to this audacious approach to when those in her life have said something was impossible. She dares to be bold and she dares to challenge the norms of what people think is possible. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Rebecca Denae. Rebecca Denae, welcome to the show. Really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share more of my story. It's really exciting.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And with that, what is your impossible?
So I feel like my impossible is kind of a series of impossibles over the past few years, and each one gets more and more impossible. It started back in 2019 when I was 18 years old. I was diagnosed with stage 3 bone cancer. Took a couple of months to get diagnosed. I wouldn't say it came out of nowhere, but it was a pretty big shock. So they started me on some super high doses of chemo, and through that, I ended up getting sepsis 3 times while trying to recover from the chemo treatments. And then on top of that, because it was a bone cancer, in order to fully treat it, they had to remove the part of the bone and the soft tissue that was cancerous. So 8 months into my treatment, they took out 16 centimeters of my tibia, took out a soft tissue tumor that was probably around the size of my fist, took out part of my patellar tendon, and then replaced the bone and the tendon with cadaver parts and held it all together with metal. And the prognosis from that was that it was a salvage surgery and that I would probably never walk normally again, which was the first impossible. And being 18, I believe I was 19 at the time when the surgery happened, you'll never walk again is not really something that you want to hear at the very beginning of your life, at any point in your life. But if I had just moved out and gone to college, really started living and just doing all of the things. And so it was pretty devastating. But I just couldn't believe that was actually going to be my life from then on out. I refused to accept it. So what they were telling me is, we'll start trying to let you do some weight bearing in about 6 months. Maybe you'll walk with a cane or with crutches in about a year. And so about 2 months later, I started trying to walk. I would hobble around. It looked like a little penguin waddle because I had this massive leg brace on my leg. And slowly I started to realize that what they thought was going to be my life didn't have to be. So I started walking, floor everyone. I kept it from my surgeon for a good 6 months because you have no idea how to tell the surgeon, by the way, I'm walking and I'm not allowed to. So he was out of the loop for a while. When I brought him in the loop, I think he almost passed out. And then from there, I just kind of took the mindset of, well, if I can walk, could I do these other things that I never thought I was going to be allowed to do again? So I started doing things like trying to learn how to jog again, started running again. I did a 5K. And then I really just took the mindset that, even if I don't think I can do it, why not just try and, see if I can. So I did my first 5K. My goal was to get in under an hour, and I got in at just at 49 minutes. And I was super excited to be able to do that. Um, and then because at that point I was in remission, I thought, I really want to start taking care of my body and, eliminate whatever chances of this happening again or recurring or anything. Um, so I thought, I'm going to start seriously working out and, getting my life back together. And I decided that the best way for me to do that, for whatever craziness was in my mind, was to start kickboxing. So I walked into a kickboxing gym with this scar that went from above my knee to my ankle, looked at one of their head coaches and said, I want to learn how to kickbox. Can you help me? And she was one of the first people that didn't look at me like I was crazy. She just said, okay, you tell me what you need and we'll figure it out. So that led into doing kickboxing. I moved into more contact martial arts like Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. And at the same time, that's how I kind of discovered Spartan racing, was through one of my coaches who looked at me and said, well, if you can do this, you can do a Spartan race. And at that point I thought, you know what, just to say that I can, I'm going to do it. So I had about one good season of Spartan racing, was doing a bunch of cool stuff with martial arts. And on my last Spartan race at that point, something was really off with my leg. It felt like a really bad shin splint, but it felt worse than that. And so I kind of just started thinking, okay, I'm going to baby it. I'm going to back off a little bit. I worked in a warehouse at that point, so I was doing 10-hour shifts on my feet, which I loved. But I woke up one morning and tried to step off the bed to get ready, and my leg just bent in a place where it should not have been bending. And it was right along that spot where they had put the cadaver bone in the metal. And I went straight into denial, had a, huge panic attack over it. We went to the hospital and found out that not only was the cadaver bone broken, but I had broken through the metal plate as well.
Yeah.
In hindsight, watching doctors react to someone breaking a titanium plate is absolutely hysterical. Just not when you're in the moment panicking about it. So I had to, go back to ortho. We started thinking of surgery ideas and how are we going to fix this? And my surgeon looked at me and gave me this huge, crazy plan that it sounded great, but I looked at him and said, okay, when do I race again? Because, I don't want to do this whole process again and not be able to walk. And he looked at me, and for the second time in my life, I heard, oh, you're not going to walk again. And I just thought, we're not doing this again, are we? Because I don't want to. And so he and I went back and forth for a little bit. And in the back of my head, all I could think of was, can't you just give me a new leg? That sounds fairly reasonable. But, I didn't want to be the one to bring that right off the bat. So we're going back and forth. We're talking different options. And I said, okay, what I need from you is to get me racing again, bottom line. And he said, I don't think I have an option that lets me do that. And I said, find an option or I'm finding a different surgeon. And we stared at each other for about 30 seconds with neither of us, willing to continue the conversation. And he leaned forward and he said, you're not going to like the option. And I said, well, it's got to be better than what you've got. And he said, well, we could amputate your leg below the knee. And I was like, let's talk about it. I'm not afraid of that. And so we talked about it. We determined that would be a quicker recovery. It would be much, easier to start racing again and start doing all these athletic things again. So I scheduled the surgery. It was, I had to wait a month, and it was one of the longest months of my life because all I wanted to do was get the surgery and start recovering. And recovery from that was pretty rough. It did not go smoothly. But eventually I did. I started wearing a prosthetic. I started walking and just learning how to live with a prosthetic again. Eventually I got connected with the team More Heart Than Scars, and I was able to do a Spartan race again, which was one of the absolute best moments of my entire life, to be able to do the thing that they said I would never do again. And then, so I got through one race, got through a few months after that, and I started having more issues with my leg because they had left some metal and some bone in to preserve my knee. But unfortunately, it got infected. They couldn't fix it, and ended up seeing a new surgeon. And, at this point, I'm trying to convey to him, this is what I want my life to look like. I need you to give me an option that lets me do that. And if it's drastic, I don't really care. I just want to do XYZ, move on with my life. I don't want to be stuck in this revolving door of surgeries. And for the love of all things good, do not tell me that I'm not going to be able to do stuff, because I will do it just to prove you wrong. And so he kind of took all that information, sat back and said, well, if you want to be able to do all that, I say we get rid of the rest of the cadaver bone and metal. We amputate above your knee, and you just start again from there. You have nothing left from your first surgery or from cancer. You'll be able to adapt. And he said, I think you're strong enough to be able to adapt and move on this way. So that is the point that I've come to, is this new, okay, now we're learning to do all of this stuff with an above knee prosthetic. But that's my series of impossibles over the last few years.
Amazing, Rebecca. And my response, my reaction is it never, as you were retelling the story, it never feels like you felt, except for maybe those very first moments when you got the news of cancer, it feels like to me you've never experienced this process as this is impossible, or that anything is going to be impossible. Is that, does that accurately describe your attitude and your feelings about this process? Again, minus those very early moments when you were told about the cancer.
I would say even during those moments, when I got diagnosed, it was actually as funny of a story as it can be for the situation. They put me in a private recovery room. I had a biopsy on the tumor on my leg. And so I wake up and I have my mom on one side. I have my my then boyfriend's mom on the other side. And the surgeon comes in. I'm happy-go-lucky. Not that I thought I was invincible, but I just had peace that no matter what happened, it was going to be fine. And my surgeon walks in and he said, hey, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but what we found was malignant. And I looked at him for a second, and little did I know, my mom and my then boyfriend's mom, they were holding tissues behind the bed. And I looked at him and said, so you're telling me I can't go back to school this semester? And he kind of cut me a look, because I don't think he was expecting that response, and said, no, I think you're going to have to take a few semesters off. And I went, okay, that's kind of devastating. More so not being able to go back to school because I was having the time of my life. And that was the small bit of what I could process at that moment. But even on the ride home, my mom looked at me and she said, so you do understand that you have cancer? And I went, yeah, but I'm just going to trust God on this one. I'm going to trust God, and I think I'm going to be okay. And from that point on, even, lying in a hospital bed with sepsis, having doctors pretty much give you the look that you might not make it out. I just refused to believe that I wasn't going to make it out, because, I think your mind is much stronger than we give it credit for. And I just refused. So I would say that, during all of those things, maybe a couple of moments, like when my leg broke and the plate broke, thinking what in the world was going to happen to me. Maybe there were a few moments of, have I hit my impossible yet? And then as soon as the panic was over and I could calm back down and get recentered, and I would say that at that point, I was like, no, this can't be the time I hit the impossible.
What is it about you, your story? I mean, the first 18 years of your life, that has enabled you, I mean, to have the humor, the resilience, the determination? What was it about everything that led up to that moment and the last 4 years, um, that enables you to have this perspective?
I think a little bit of it is just some audacity because, being able to look at a bunch of surgeons who are telling you, this is what your life is going to look like, you got to have some audacity to look back and go, yeah, I don't think so. And like you mentioned, the first, 18 years prior to my diagnosis, um, I can kind of remember one time where that little bit of audacity kicked in. Throughout high school, I had dual enrolled with one of the local colleges, and my goal was to graduate with my associates when I graduated high school. And so I was working so hard to be able to do that. I was taking as many college classes as I could in conjunction with my high school classes. And I remember one of my counselors, they looked at me and said, "Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to graduate before, to get your AA before you leave high school." So I said, "Okay, so I'm going to do it a semester early." And I didn't tell them that. I didn't tell anyone that. I just put it in my mind and I planned it all out and said, "Okay, I've got 3, 4 semesters to get this many classes done. I've got the summers. This is what I'm going to do." And so I graduated with my AA a semester before I graduated high school because I really don't like being told that I'm not going to do things or that, I'm not capable of doing things. And so maybe it's a little bit to my detriment, but I will, stress myself out a little bit to do that thing. Um, and a lot of it is just to prove people wrong. But I think that mindset was kind of the seed that planted all of that for when I had to go through things that, my life and well being required a little bit of that attitude to not just cower down and say, "Okay, I'm never going to walk again. I'm never going to be normal again. I'm going to be suffering from these effects for the rest of my life." Instead of being able to take control and saying, "I don't want to suffer this stuff that I've suffered from chemo for the rest of my life. I don't want to suffer not being able to live my life to its absolute fullest." So instead of just cowering and listening and going, "Okay, yes, let's just, let's just do this and mess up my leg all over again. And I was like, "No, we got to find some solutions here because I'm not okay with this."
Mm. I I'm deeply fascinated by even that moment where you said to the counselor, "No, I'm gonna do it a semester before." You called it this audacity. Um, Again, I'm just wildly curious about that. What is it? Was there somebody in your story, that influenced you to say that, "I can actually do that. I can be audacious"? Is there someone or circumstance that planted that seed that I can actually be this way and it's okay?
I think it would be my mom. She's my person. She's my close person. And all throughout middle school and high school, she she taught me to think differently about things. So instead of just an automatic yes, no, yes, you can do this, no, you can't. She taught me to be a little bit of a lawyer for myself and to say, okay, what does this entail? What do I have to do to get there? What does this process look like? Do I have to do some pre prepping? Is this an in the moment kind of thing? Um, and it started, I'd say, around 7th grade. I had moved schools and I got involved in their symphonic band. And they said, "Hey, we want you to join the marching band." And so I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, they want me to join marching band. I really want to do this." And again, instead of a whole yes, no situation, she's like, "All right, why? Why do you want to join it? Is it because they want you to? Is it because you want to? What kind of work is it going to take?" And from then on, it became that, I want to take this solo to state solo and ensemble. What do I have to do it? Um, and throughout all of that, you always get that person or those people that go, "Are you sure you can do that? Are you sure you want to do that?" I was a drummer, being a female drummer with a lot of guys on drumline, you kind of have to learn to prove yourself really quickly. And and so throughout all of those circumstances, having my mom teach me that, what do you have to do to get there? So do that thing. And if you think you can do that thing, go for it. Um, Kind of just taught me to think through problems like that. Don't just automatically shut it off and go, oh, can't do that. Um, but to really strategize it. And it started with those small strategizing things like, okay, what does it take for me to be a marching drummer? I have to do these things. To what does it take for me to walk again? I have to be able to do these things. And then, moving that into learning to use a prosthetic. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but the thought process is still the same of find your problem, find your steps to your solution, and do it. And throughout this entire process, from my earliest memories to now, my mom has always been that person that says, okay, if you think you can do it, then figure out a way to do it. And I'm here for you.
Mm. You mentioned, when you went to that kickboxing class, I think you phrased it as this coach was or trainer was the first person to not think you were crazy when you asked to be taught. Again, and you've referred to it throughout the conversation, except for your mom, that there was all of these questions that others were, or the looks. Are you crazy? I don't think you can do that. Can you point to a few others besides your mom who have made this impossible possible?
Yeah. So like I said, it started with my mom, especially right after surgery, with her not being one of those people to tell me that I wasn't going to walk XYZ. There was that coach when I walked in and she said, okay, what do you need? Do you need us to put some extra shin guards on that leg so that you don't hurt anything? Do we need to, teach you some modifications, stuff like that? And then at around the same time, I met another kickboxing coach who came in, and we just had a really short conversation. He saw the scar on my leg and said, okay, what do you need from me? And I said, oh, just, teach me how to modify some things. This is the way I do these things right now. And we went for the class. And then as we were cooling down from the class, he looks at my leg because it was a noticeable scar. It wasn't, something very small. And he said, hey, not to point out the elephant in the room, but that's a really big scar. Can you tell me about that? And I've always been super open with my story. So I was, absolutely. And as I was telling him all of this, and at that point it was maybe a year or two after I had had my surgery, he looked at me and said, so if you can do that, you can do a Spartan race. And through that, I think that's where it started to grow, where there were more people around saying, yeah, you can absolutely do that. You should try that. And I think there's a little bit of a balance between, that one person that starts off, that kickstarts that belief in yourself that you can do it. And then everyone else kind of starts to pick up around it, where they go, okay, she can do that. Well, if she can do that, then she can do this. And it just starts to spread. And around the same time, I started going to a new church. So I had this new church community, and they're finding out all of this craziness. And, they haven't gone the journey with me, but, and admittedly, they got a wild story because they got cancer, leg surgery, Spartan races, and they're going, whoa. And at that point, they started to really lift me up and start saying, okay, well, if you've done that, you can do these things. So anytime I brought these crazy ideas like, hey guys, I'm going to do a Spartan trifecta weekend as my second, third, and fourth races that I've ever done, they're like, cool, do it. You're gonna be fine. And then through Spartan racing, I found More Heart Than Scars, who was absolutely instrumental in getting me back to racing. Because even though by that point, I had very little doubt that I was going to race again, there was the practical element of but how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to relearn these things as an adaptive athlete, without someone to kind of show me the ropes and at least keep me sane while I'm relearning it? And that's where More Heart Than Scars really stepped in. And they have so much knowledge of adaptive athletics and how you have to do things differently that when we were on the course together, they helped me relearn, how to use my prosthetic to do the different obstacles. And at the times where I was starting to feel like, okay, this hurts, I'm kind of done. This is not, it's that little moment where it's like, I really pay to do this. This is crazy. Where they were beside me, at some points, even holding me up in the mud because my leg kept slipping, telling me that I was going to make it to the end of the race if they had to carry me. And just that kind of encouragement that I'm not doing it by myself, that whatever I need, these people are here for me. It made a world of difference, not only in that race, but even now as an above knee amputee, thinking, well, now I have to relearn this all over again. And it's going to be harder, but knowing More Heart Than Scars is a call away. If there is anything I want to do that I need someone to just give me some advice, give me some training tips, or take it back onto the course, I have these people. They're going to help me. They're going to lift me up emotionally and spiritually just as much as they may lift me over obstacles. And so it's a very comforting thing to know that, I don't have to go this journey by myself. And whenever I hit that thing that says, this may be your impossible, I can look at it and go, no, I don't think it is.
Mm. Yeah, you and I are both More Heart Than Scars adaptive athletes. I've done a number of races, and if I think back to the very first one I did, it wasn't actually Spartan, but it was an OCR. There was a moment in that race where something clicked.
Yep.
And similarly as to you, to have the level of support that this group of people had for me, something in that race clicked, and it opened up things about what's possible that had never existed before. I'm wondering, in the race that you did, that first race with them that you just described, was there a moment or a thought that generated through that opened up a new way of seeing the world or your life or anything for that matter?
I think so. It was one of my favorite moments of that race, and it also was kind of the moment where like you said, it all clicked. We were going up the A-frame cargo net, and which is really nerve-wracking when you can't feel your foot. So they always tell you, don't look down. Well, I have to look down so I can see where I'm putting my feet. I'm not afraid of heights, but when you start getting on that, everyone's going up, the whole thing is shaking. It's a little nerve-wracking. So I had a couple of teammates around me. One of them was kind of holding my prosthetic foot to make sure it was hitting the right places. And I looked at one of my teammates and I said, I want to front flip over the top, because I had been taught by More Heart Than Scars how to do that in a previous race before I was considered adaptive. And that just felt like that moment of, I want to be able to do this like I used to. And so no one batted an eye. They were like, you want to flip the cargo net? We're going to flip the cargo net with you. So we get up to the top. I'm like trying to get my hands locked in, and I flip over the top. And what I didn't realize was that the opening in my prosthetic foot had accumulated a lot of mud. And so when my legs flipped over my head, the mud fell out of my shoe and hit me in the face. And the entire team started laughing. They were clapping. Everyone was just ecstatic that I was able to do that thing that I did one time. And I'm standing there, got mud all over my face. I'm starting to go, oh my goodness, I hope it didn't get in my mouth, because that's just gross. Wiping it off of my face, and everyone's like, that's your welcome back from the Spartan course. And I'm sitting at the top of the cargo net just going, I'm back. I can do this. Front flipping the cargo net, I wouldn't say with a prosthetic is like the most impossible hard thing in the world. But it was just that this is exactly what I used to do. and I'm in the middle of it again. These are the prayers that have been answered. This is the work that's finally coming to, not to a close, but, this is the moment that I've been working for. And it just made me think, okay, if I can get out here and do this with a prosthetic, there are so many things that, that I can do that I don't maybe think that I could do. And it reminded me of a video that was taken of me while I was in treatment, and a little bit after treatment. And someone asked me, how does this make you feel being in chemo, trying to survive cancer? And I said, well, if I can survive cancer, then there's a lot I can do that I don't think I can do. And it just brought it back around of these 5 years of, well, I didn't think I could do that. And we did that. And I didn't think I could do this. And we did that. And it just reminded me of that 18-year-old sitting in a hospital bed, taking chemo, and confidently looking at the camera and saying, I can get through this and I can do whatever, I put my mind to after that. And it was just such a full circle moment of no matter what happens in my life. Like I said, at this time I was a below knee amputee and now I'm an above. I'm just not going to let these things stop me. I'm going to at least give it a try.
Mm. And you made the choice. Well, you're here on the podcast, but earlier this year you published a book, and you made a choice in that. What went into the decision, and what was your thought process in deciding to write that book and share your story there and here and other places?
It all started, I had always wanted to write a book, even well before I got diagnosed. And then when I got diagnosed, it kind of turned into, I think I should write a book about this, some way to help someone. And I had a few ideas that I was kind of spitballing around, and I was praying about it. What am I supposed to write? How am I supposed to even start this journey? And around the same time, I started speaking to med students at one of the universities around here, to tell them about my story. And I just found this passion to just tell the story, and whatever audience is listening will get what they need out of it. So instead of trying to write to med students or to cancer survivors, I just said, I'm just going to tell the whole story. And so it took about a year and a half of writing. I was writing the story before the amputation happened. So when my first amputation happened, I had to close the laptop and go, I need to heal from this before I can even think about trying to write about it. And then I just continued to write about it and to, bring up all these experiences, which, in a way, reliving that trauma and re-experiencing it to tell the story was difficult, but it was really healing at the same time. And at the same time, I had so many people telling me, hey, we really want to know your whole story. We want to know all of these things that put you where you are today. And so I just decided, okay, if people want to hear the story, I'll tell them the story. And so I wrote the book and released it, and have heard some absolutely incredible things from different groups, people in the medical field who say, we had no idea that things like this actually went on, or that this is how you think as a patient. And then other people who've survived cancer that said, that was so validating to know that when you felt this, I also felt that, and I wasn't alone in that. Or to other amputees who said, this journey has helped my journey. And so from hearing all of that, it just made me want to share the story in any aspect that I could for anyone who could get anything out of it, whether it's hope or encouragement or being able to see their situation a little bit differently, instead of looking at these things that everyone has said is impossible, for them to go, well, maybe it's not. Because sometimes it really is that one person telling you that it's not impossible for you to change your mind and actually try, because you've got that one person that believed in you. And I also wanted to if someone doesn't have anyone in their life to say, you can do that thing, I wanted my story in whatever form I could get it out to maybe reach that person to say, no, I think you can do that.
Mm. If folks want to find your book, where can we send them?
So it is on Amazon if you search Limitless by Rebecca Denae. And it is also on my website, which is RebeccaDenae.com.
Is that the best place if people want to get in touch with you or learn more? Is that the best place that we can send them?
The website is, it has my social media on it. It has a contact page. So the website is a good place just to go everywhere else.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all of those links in the show notes. Before we wrap, Rebecca, if you were to just share one message with those that are listening or watching, what would you love to share with them?
I would want people to know that the expectations of everyone else around them does not define them. Because with with people in general, groups of people, you're always going to have different ideas or different opinions. People do project a lot. It's just how things go, and that's something that I've realized. You have to learn. But when when you have an idea, when you want to do something, and you share that with people, and you get these mixed, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or blah 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 blah. I would just encourage people to not let that define them, or not let everyone else's idea of their circumstance define them, because doing things may not look exactly like what they want it to look like. For me, Spartan racing doesn't look the same anymore. Not many things that I want to do look the same anymore, but it's not impossible just because it doesn't look like what you think it should look like. And if you let other people's opinions and perspectives cloud your judgment on that, it blocks you off from finding that person that believes in you, or that group that will take you to do it or teach you how to do it for whatever abilities you have. And I think I would just encourage people to not let those opinions block them off.
I love it. I love it. Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing your story today with us. It's a massive, massive gift.
It was such a blessing for me too. Thank you for the opportunity.